My sister stood up in court today, pointed straight at me in front of the judge, the lawyers, our mother, and a room full of strangers, and called me a thief. Not in a vague way. Not in a mistakes were made way. She said in a clear, steady voice, "Your Honor, my sister stole over $80,000 from our mother." Then she read out my bank transactions like a grocery list of shame. My rent, my car payment, my therapy sessions. Even this one stupid $120 Sephora order I barely remember making when I was stress shopping at 2 a.m. And as if that wasn't enough, she started crying real tears. Ugly sobbing about how I exploited our mom while she was defenseless. Everyone in that courtroom turned and looked at me like I was a monster. I don't remember ever feeling that exposed, that naked. The worst part, half the story she told was technically true. The other half was a lie someone very close to both of us carefully built, piece by piece, using my own trust against me. To understand how it got this bad, I guess I need to back up. I'm 33, my sister Rachel is 36, and we grew up in a pretty average middle-class family in the Midwest. Dad was a mechanic, Mom was a school secretary. We weren't rich, but we weren't struggling, at least not in a way we could see as kids. What we did have, weirdly, was this constant undercurrent of one day when we're gone. You girls will have the house and a little nest egg. My parents talked about wills like most parents talk about vacations. I think it was my dad's way of calming his own anxiety. He didn't come from much and he was obsessed with leaving something. So we grew up hearing about the house, the retirement, the life insurance, as if that was our shared future project. Rachel and I couldn't be more different. She was always the pretty, fun one, the cheerleader, the one with a rotating roster of boyfriends, the one who just figured it out. I was the quiet, nerdy kid with anxiety and color-coded binders. I went into nursing because I wanted something stable and meaningful. Rachel bounced around bartending, retail, NOMs, a stint in real estate where she mostly posted selfies at open houses she didn't sell. She got married at 25, divorced at 30, and moved 2 states away for a fresh start that never really seemed to solidify. She always sounded a little desperate on the phone, always between jobs or getting back on her feet. My parents worried about her constantly. About me, they'd say stuff like, "At least we don't have to worry about you. Jess, you're so responsible." It was meant as a compliment, but it also quietly nominated me to be the family's backup plan. The other player in this mess is our cousin, Adam. He's 35, son of my mom's younger sister, and he was always around growing up. Holiday dinners, summer barbecues, you name it. He and Rachel were thick as thieves as teen same parties. Same bad decisions, but somehow he came out of it with a shiny career as a financial advisor. He was the first in our extended family to get a fancy corporate job downtown. Suits, leased BMW, Instagram stories of rooftop bars and client dinners. My mom used to brag about him like he was her 3rd kid. "Adam's so smart with money," she'd say pointedly when Rachel came around asking for a little help again. I always thought that was a bit ironic given all the shady vibes I got from his get rich with me posts, but whatever. He was family, he knew numbers, and everyone trusted him by default. 3 years ago, everything shifted. Dad had a heart attack at work and died before the ambulance even got him to the hospital. One minute he was yelling at the cable company on speakerphone. The next minute he was just gone. My mom crumpled. 40 years of marriage ripped away, and suddenly she was this small, lost person wandering through their 2-big house. I stepped in without really thinking about it. I took leave from my nursing job, helped plan the funeral, dealt with the life insurance forms, called the pension office. Rachel flew in for the funeral, cried loudest at the service, then had to go back because of work. even though she'd been complaining for months that her boss barely scheduled her dot around that same time. We started noticing things about Mom that we'd brushed off before. Little lapses. She'd repeat the same story twice in one phone call, or forget she'd already taken her medication. One afternoon, I found the stove on under an empty pot, the metal glowing red hot while she sat in the living room watching reruns. When I brought it up gently, she laughed it off. "I've just got a lot on my mind," she said. "But I'm a nurse. I know what early dementia looks like." And I saw it creeping into my mother's eyes. After a few scary incidents, like Mom getting lost driving to the grocery store she'd gone to for 20 years, I convinced her to see a neurologist. The diagnosis wasn't full-blown Alzheimer's yet, but it was mild cognitive impairment, likely progressive. That phrase lodged in my chest like a stone. The doctor strongly recommended getting her legal and financial affairs in order while she was still competent. Power of attorney. Healthcare proxy. All those words that make you feel like you're signing up to watch someone you love slowly disappear. Rachel came back for that appointment. To her credit, she sat there in the doctor's office, makeup perfect, nodding solemnly. When Mom later asked us to meet with her lawyer, Rachel dialed in over Zoom from her apartment in another state. Mom's lawyer explained power of attorney, how someone needed to be able to pay bills, deal with the bank, make decisions if Mom couldn't. Then he asked, delicately, who she wanted. Without hesitation, Mom said, "Jess." Rachel didn't say anything then, but I saw it. That quick flash of hurt and jealousy in her eyes, like someone had slapped her. The lawyer, trying to be diplomatic, suggested making us co-agents. Mom shook her head. "I don't want them fighting over every little thing," she said. "Jess is here. She knows my meds, my routines. I trust her." It felt like a compliment twisted into a curse dot, so I became my mother's financial and medical power of attorney. It sounded so official, but in practice it meant things like sitting on hold with the bank for an hour, sorting through piles of mail, making sure her prescriptions were refilled, driving her to appointments, and gently redirecting her when she asked for Dad. It also meant opening her online banking for the first time and really seeing the numbers. My parents had done better than I thought. There was the house paid off, about $180,000 in a retirement account, a savings account with around $45,000, plus Dad's modest life insurance, which after funeral costs left about $60,000. That went straight into an account just for Mom's care. To me, those numbers were terrifying and comforting at the same time, enough to maybe keep her okay for a while if we were careful, but not enough to be careless, Rachel. On the other hand, heard those numbers and saw opportunity, I guess. At first it was small. "Can Mom help me with my car payment this month?" She'd text. Or, "I'm behind on rent. Does she still have that life insurance money?" I tried to be fair. Mom was still competent then, so I'd bring her the requests. "Do you want to help Ratch with rent this month?" I'd ask. Mom would sigh, bite her lip, and usually say yes. I'd write the check, make the transfer, whatever. It annoyed me, but it felt like it wasn't my place to say no when the money was technically Mom's. But as the disease progressed, the dynamic shifted. Mom started forgetting she'd just given Rachel money. Rachel's asks got bigger and more emotional. "If I get evicted, I'll have to move back home, and you know you don't want that drama while Mom's sick," she'd say, half joking, half dead serious. Sometimes she'd call Mom directly first, get her all worked up, then call me and say, "Mom said it's okay to help me. You're just being controlling." It was like dealing with a teenager who had discovered loopholes in the house rules. Enter Adam, our golden boy cousin. Around this time, Mom's accountant retired. She had a small tax situation with Dad's pension and the life insurance, and I was already swamped trying to juggle her care with going back to work part-time. My Aunt Adam's mom said, "Oh, just have Adam look at it. He's great with this stuff." So I called him. He came over in a crisp button down, carrying a leather portfolio, and hugged me like we were long-lost siblings. He sat at our dining room table, spread out Mom's statements, and made soothing noises. "You're doing amazing, Jess," he said. "I see this all the time. You're ahead of the game." That validation went straight to some vulnerable part of me that was desperate for approval. Adam started helping more. He set up automatic bill pay for Mom's utilities. He recommended moving some of her savings into a low-risk investment account to outpace inflation. He talked about maximizing her runway so we could keep her in the house longer instead of a nursing home. He was good at making everything sound smart and inevitable. Mom loved him fussing over her. She'd pat his hand and say, "You always were our math whiz." He'd grin and deflect, but you could tell he loved it, the hero role. The first red flag should have been when he said, "Given your work situation, it would make sense for you to get a caregiver stipend from your mom's funds." I had reduced my hours to take care of Mom down to 3 shifts a week, which tanked my income. I was paying part of her groceries, some utilities, and honestly, my own rent was getting tight. The idea of a small monthly payment for the hours I spent showering her, cooking her meals, dealing with her finances, it sounded fair. I pushed back at first. "I don't want Rachel thinking I'm stealing from Mom," I said. Adam waved it off. "We'll document everything," he said. "It's industry standard. Family caregivers burn out because they feel guilty about getting compensated. Don't be a martyr." Mom agreed. "You gave up a lot for me," she said, grabbing my hand and squeezing it with surprising strength. "I don't want you to suffer." So we set it up. A monthly $1,200 transfer from Mom's account to mine, labeled caregiving. Adam even drafted a simple care contract for us to sign. It felt legitimate. Still, I didn't mention the exact amount to Rachel. I told her vaguely that Mom insisted on helping me with bills since I'd cut back my hours. Rachel made a face but didn't push it then. I exhaled, not realizing I just handed someone the seed they'd later weaponize to destroy my reputation. Fast forward a year. Mom's condition got worse. There were days she thought I was her sister, nights she'd wander the house asking for Dad, mornings where she'd sit at the table staring at a spoon like she couldn't remember what it was for. It was heartbreaking and exhausting. I was running on caffeine and adrenaline, charting vitals at work, and then doing it again at home. Rachel, meanwhile, was spiraling. She'd call drunk late at night, slurring about how no one ever took care of me like you take care of Mom. She bounced between jobs, got into a relationship with some guy who seemed sketchy as hell, and kept hitting me up for money. Or, more accurately, hitting Mom up through me. The fight started to escalate. "Why does Mom pay for your gas but not my phone bill?" She'd snap. Or, "Must be nice living rent-free in that big house." That one made me see red. "I pay rent," I shot back once, turning my phone's camera to show the personal check I'd literally just written to Mom's account. "You're not paying fair market value," she said, rolling her eyes. "You're basically inheriting the house early." The jealousy in her voice was like acid. I tried to explain again that I covered a ton of costs out of pocket and the rent was symbolic more than anything, but it was like talking to a wall. In her mind, I had everything: stability, proximity to Mom, control of the money, and she had nothing but chaos. The first legal threat came in the form of a screenshot. One night, Rachel texted me a photo of a Google search result: elder financial abuse penalties. Underneath, she'd written, "You might want to be more careful with Mom's money." My stomach dropped. I called her instantly. "What the hell is this?" I demanded. She laughed, this brittle, mean sound I barely recognized. "Just educating myself," she said. You've got access to all her accounts, right? Someone should be making sure you're not helping yourself. I swallowed hard. Everything I do is for Mom, I said. You know that, do I? She shot back. You're the one whose bank account suddenly looks different. That's when I realized she'd been looking at Mom's statements, seeing the caregiver payments, and drawing her own conclusions. I made what I now see as a huge mistake in that moment. Instead of shutting the conversation down or insisting we talk with a neutral third party, I went into defensive oversharing mode. I sent her a breakdown. Here's what Mom's monthly income is. Here's what her expenses are. Here's the $1,200 caregiving stipend we agreed on. Here are the transfers to you for rent and your car. I thought if I showed her the math, she'd calm down. Instead, she fixated on anything that looked like a benefit to me. So Mom pays the property tax and you get to live there cheap and you get a paycheck, she texted. Must be nice being the favorite. I wanted to scream. I also clean up her incontinence accidents and stop her from wandering into traffic, I replied. Do you want to trade? Around this time, Adam started acting different, more distant with me, more chummy with Rachel. I'd see their little banter on social media inside jokes, memes about cousin shenanigans. One day he called me and said, Hey, Ratch reached out with some concerns about the way you're handling Aunt Linda's money. My stomach clenched. What concerns? I asked. He hesitated just long enough to make me want to jump through the phone. She's worried you're overwhelmed, he said carefully, that you might not be making the best decisions. I told her you're doing great, but she asked me to take a closer look at the accounts just to make sure everything's kosher. For your protection, too. That phrase, for your protection, should have made me hung up. Instead, because I was tired and insecure and desperate for someone to tell me I wasn't screwing up, I said, Okay, tell me what you need. That's how Adam ended up with read-only access to Mom's online banking and investment accounts. I'll just generate some reports, analyze the cash flow, make sure we can keep her in the house, he said. No changes without your approval, promise. He had already earned my trust with the stipend idea and his help with taxes, so I didn't question it. I even felt grateful. Thank you, I remember saying. I really appreciate you. Somewhere a door closed behind me and I didn't even hear the lock click. Then, about 6 months ago, Rachel dropped the bomb. It was a Thursday night. I was folding laundry on Mom's bed, the TV murmuring in the background, when my phone started blowing up with texts from her. Answer your phone. This is serious. You can't ignore this, Jess. I sighed, put down the shirt I was folding, and called her. She didn't even say hello. I know what you're doing, she said. Her voice was tight, vibrating with barely contained rage. My brain immediately flashed to worst-case scenarios. Did Mom wander out again? Did something happen? What are you talking about? I asked. Adam showed me the statements, she said. Don't play dumb. I know you've been draining Mom's accounts. It felt like someone had punched me. What? I croaked. No, I want statements. She launched into this breathless rant about unauthorized transfers, suspicious withdrawals, payments to your landlord, your credit card, your stupid Amazon account. She said Adam had gone through everything and found pattern self-dealing. The phrase sounded like it came straight out of a legal manual. There's over 80 grand missing from what should be there, she said. $80,000, Jess. What did you do with it? My head spun. That's not possible, I said. We've been paying for her meds, her home care, the new roof. Your stuff, don't throw that back in my face, she snapped. The math doesn't lie. You've been using Mom like an ATM. I made another mistake then. I panicked and got defensive instead of staying calm and insisting on a joint meeting with a professional. Adam must be wrong, I said, my voice shaking. I haven't taken anything that wasn't agreed on. If something's missing, it's a bank error or what? She cut in. Mom's been sneaking out and hitting the casino. Get real. Her words were like knives. I'm calling Adult Protective Services, she said. And a lawyer. And done letting you gaslight me. She hung up on my stunned silence. The next few weeks were a blur of dread. I got a letter from APS requesting to discuss concerns about potential financial exploitation. I got an email from Mom's bank about additional verification needed due to a third-party report. And then, the worst. A process server showed up at my door with a stack of papers. Rachel was petitioning the court to remove me as Mom's power of attorney, appoint herself as guardian, and order full accounting of every cent I'd touched in the last 3 years. The phrase breach of fiduciary duty was in there, along with misappropriation and conversion. There was even a line about possible criminal referral. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, clutching those papers while Mom fussed with a puzzle in the next room, humming tunelessly. My vision blurred. I felt like I was falling through the floor. I'd spent years bathing this woman, fighting insurance on her behalf, arguing with doctors to get her the right meds, and my own sister was accusing me of stealing from her. And somehow, thanks to Adam's analysis, she had numbers to back it up. I got a lawyer. I had to. I found a guy who specialized in elder law, paid his retainer with the last of my emergency fund, and sat in his wood-paneled office trying not to hyperventilate. I slid the stack of papers across his desk. He read them, lips pursed. How much have you actually taken for yourself? He asked, not unkindly. Besides the caregiver payments? I swallowed. Nothing, I said. I mean, I've used her credit card for groceries sometimes, but I always separate out my stuff. The only regular thing is the $1,200 stipend, and it's documented. She agreed to it. He tapped his pen against the petition. Opposing counsel is alleging significantly more than that, he said. They have bank records showing transfers into your personal account totaling around $80,000 over 3 years. I racked my brain, trying to reconcile that number with reality. Then I remembered something. A time Adam had suggested consolidating some of Mom's accounts. We could simplify things, he'd said. Have her pension and Social Security funnel into one account, then transfer out what you need for bills, groceries, your stipend, and so on into a second account with a debit card you use. At the time, it had made sense. 2 accounts, one inbound, one operational. I hadn't even questioned it. My lawyer asked me to write down every conversation I could remember with Adam about money. I felt sick as I did. Little phrases bubbled up. Don't worry, I'll take care of the back end. I'll set up some automatic sweeps. You don't need to fuss with it. Just trust me. This will make your life easier. While all this was swirling, Mom's cognition took another hit, like the stress seeped into her bones. She started having more bad days than good. Sometimes she'd look at me and say, "Where's Rachel? Why isn't she here? She's always so busy." The guilt sliced me open. I was angry at Rachel, terrified of her, but also still that little sister who just wanted her big sister to show up and share the load. Instead, she was gearing up to drag me into court. Adam was weirdly scarce during this period. I'd text him, "We need to talk," and he'd respond hours later with, "In back-to-back client meetings, what's up?" If I mentioned the petition, he'd say vague things like, "I'm sure it'll all get sorted out," or "It's probably a misunderstanding." He never once offered to meet with my lawyer. Meanwhile, Rachel was blowing up the family group text with passive-aggressive comments. "I just want what's best for Mom," she'd say. "I'm not going to apologize for protecting her." My aunt chimed in too, with gems like, "If there's nothing to hide, then transparency shouldn't be a problem. I found out Rachel had already told half our extended family that I might be going to jail. The app's investigation actually went better than I feared. The social worker who came to the house was calm and kind. She asked Mom some questions, which Mom mostly flubbed, then pulled me aside. "We have concerns," she said, "but it looks like you're providing appropriate care. The financial part will depend on the court and the counting." It was a tiny lifeline. Someone who didn't instantly assume I was a villain. Still, the court date loomed like an execution. That's how we ended up in that fluorescent lit courtroom this morning. Probate Court, Division C, with its scuffed benches and bored bailiff. I wore my nicest blazer, the one I usually save for job interviews, and still felt like a kid playing dress up. Rachel sat on the other side of the aisle in a sleek black suit and heels, her hair in a smooth blowout, looking like she was auditioning for a legal drama. Next to her was her attorney, a sharp-faced woman named Miss Connors, and, to my shock, Adam. He was in his usual navy suit, looking every inch the respectable finance professional. When our eyes met, he gave me this tiny, almost apologetic nod, then looked away. My stomach twisted. My lawyer, Mr. Patel, leaned over and whispered, "Remember, answer only what's asked. Don't volunteer. Stay calm." I nodded, my mouth too dry to speak. At the front of the room, the judge, a middle-aged man with tired eyes, called the case. In the matter of Linda Carter, petition for guardianship and accounting. Hearing my mom's name like that, stripped of mom, made me want to cry. She was there too, sitting behind me with a court-appointed guardian ad litem, looking small and confused. She kept whispering, "Why are we here?" Under her breath, Miss Connors went first, painting a picture of me as the scheming caretaker slowly siphoning my mom's money while isolating her from her other child. She used phrases like gross conflict of interest and self-enrichment. She held up printed bank statements with yellow highlighter slashing across the caregiver's stipend transfers, my rent payments. Checks labeled only JC. Over 3 years, Your Honor, these stipends and miscellaneous transfers total approximately $82,000, she said. All going to Jessica Carter's personal accounts with no oversight. She let the number hang in the air like a bad smell. Then she called Rachel to the stand. Watching my sister walk up there, swear to tell the truth, and then systematically demolish my character felt like an out-of-body experience. She talked about how I'd taken over after Dad died, how I discouraged her from visiting, how I controlled access to Mom. She talked about the stipend like it was some secret salary, not something we documented. But the part that really gutted me was when she started sharing my darkest moments. "Is it true," Miss Connors asked her, "that your sister has a history of mental health issues?" My lawyer objected relevance, but the judge allowed limited testimony on my capacity. Rachel nodded solemnly. "She struggled with anxiety and depression for years," she said. "There were times she couldn't get out of bed. She's been on multiple medications. Once she called me saying she didn't want to be alive anymore. That last part was technically true, but she didn't mention it was a late-night panic call after a double shift where I'd explicitly said, 'I'm not suicidal, I'm just overwhelmed.' In court, it sounded like I was one step away from a 72-hour hold-up. Miss Connors then held up a printed screenshot that made my blood run cold. It was from a text I'd sent Rachel a year ago in a moment of venting. "Some days I hate this house so much. I feel like Mom's prison guard instead of her daughter." Underneath, Rachel had replied, "Then why don't you just leave?" And I'd said, "I can't. I'm trapped. At least I get the stipend. LOL. It had been a dark joke typed through tears. In court, it looked like a confession. "Would you say your sister was resentful about her role?" Miss Connors asked. "Yes," Rachel said, eyes shining with tears. I think she started to feel entitled to Mom's money as compensation. When it was my turn to testify, I felt like I was walking into a lion's den. My own lawyer guided me through explaining the caregiving, the POE, the stipend. I tried to keep my voice steady as I described wiping Mom after she used the bathroom, redirecting her when she got agitated, losing sleep watching motion sensors to make sure she didn't leave the house at night. The judge listened, expression unreadable. Then Miss Connor stood up for cross-examination, and everything narrowed down to an attack on Miss Carter. She began, "Is it true that you currently pay no formal rent to your mother?" I explained the modest check I wrote each month and the utilities I covered. She twisted it. "So, effectively, you live in a paid-off house for a token amount while your mother's dwindling funds cover the property taxes and upkeep. Correct?" Before I could fully answer, she moved on. "Is it also true that you used your mother's credit card at Sephora on June 12th of last year?" She held up the statement. "Yes," I said, flustered, "but that was for skin cream for her." And would your mother normally purchase Urban Decay eyeshadow palettes and Fenty lip gloss?" She cut in. Laughter rippled in the back of the courtroom. My face burned. I tried to explain that I'd accidentally mixed in some of my items and later reimbursed the account, but without receipts it sounded weak. She drilled into every gray area of my life. "You attended therapy 12 times last year? Did your mother's stipend money help pay your copays? You took a weekend trip with your boyfriend? Was that before or after a $1,200 transfer from your mother's account?" It felt like my entire existence was being sliced open and examined under a microscope, with every flaw magnified. When she finally said, "Isn't it true, Miss Carter, that you felt you deserved this money because you gave up your social life and career opportunities to care for your mother?" Something in me snapped. "I deserved not to go insane," I blurted. "I deserved help. I deserved a sister who didn't only show up when she smelled money." The judge barked, "Miss Carter, please just answer the questions." And my lawyer put a hand on my arm, but the damage was done. I looked over and saw Rachel smirking through her tears. The final blow of the day came when Miss Connors called Adam to the stand. I hadn't known he'd be testifying. He walked up there all calm and professional, was sworn in, and then proceeded to dismantle me with spreadsheets. He explained how he'd been asked by the family to review Mom's finances. He talked about significant untethered outflows and inadequate record keeping. He said, "In my professional opinion, the way Jessica has managed her mother's funds shows a pattern of self-dealing that is concerning." Each sentence felt like betrayal sliding between my ribs. This was the cousin who'd set up the very systems he was now condemning me for. Then Miss Connors put up a chart on the screen. It showed 2 lines, Mom's account balance over time, steadily declining, and the total amount transferred to my name, steadily climbing. "On multiple occasions," Adam said. Pointing, there were transfers from Linda, Carter's savings into Jessica Carter's checking that were not, labeled as caregiving payments and did not correspond with documented expenses. He named dates some I recognized, some I didn't. On March 8th, a $5,000 transfer. On July 2nd, a $3,500 transfer. On November 15th, $2,800. None of these have clear documentation. I stammered that I didn't remember those exact transfers. In truth, I didn't. I'd let Adam set up the automations. I trusted him. Now that trust made me look like a liar. By the time the judge called a recess, I was shaking so hard I could barely stand. I went to the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and just sobbed silently, my hand pressed over my mouth so no one would hear. In my head, a cruel voice whispered, "Maybe you are a thief. Maybe you did deserve this. Maybe you should have just let them put Mom in a home and walked away." When I finally splashed cold water on my face and looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. Puffy eyes, splotchy skin, this hunted expression. That's when the door opened and of all people, Adam walked in. I guess he thought I was still in court. He froze when he saw me. Sorry, he stammered, glancing back at the door. I'd never seen him look nervous before. Something inside me hardened. Get out, I said. My voice was low but steady. He didn't move. Jess, listen, he started. I stepped toward him. You did this, I said. You set this up. You told them about the stipend, about the accounts. Why? His face crumpled, just for a split second, then smoothed. I had to be honest, he said. I was subpoenaed. I couldn't lie under oath. Rage flared. Honest? I spat. Where was your honesty when you told me you'd take care of the back end? When you set up transfers I didn't fully understand? When you told me not to worry about documentation? He flushed. You signed off on everything, he said. You're the POA. Ultimately, it's your responsibility. That line, you're the POA, echoed in my head later when everything blew up. At the time, standing in that bathroom, I just felt sick. If I go down for this, I said, I'm taking you with me. Don't forget your name is all over those setups too. For the first time, I saw something like fear flash through his eyes. He opened his mouth to say something, then my lawyer knocked on the door, calling my name, and Adam slipped out past him like a shadow. The hearing didn't finish today. The judge scheduled a continuation for next month, saying he wanted a forensic accountant to go through everything. In the meantime, he suspended my POA and appointed a neutral conservator to manage Mom's funds. Hearing that felt like another gut punch. Even though I knew it might protect me in the long run, in that moment it felt like being officially branded untrustworthy. Mom kept whispering, "Why are these people in my house?" As the conservator walked through later, making notes. I wanted to disappear, so that's where I was emotionally when, a few hours after we got home, my phone buzzed with an email from one of the smaller banks Mom had an old CD at. The subject line was, "Security alert, online access established." The body said, "Dear Jessica Carter, online banking access has been successfully established for your account ending in *********. If you did not initiate this, please contact us immediately." My blood ran cold. I had not established any new access. I'd barely been able to look at a computer without wanting to throw up. I called the number in the email, half hoping it was some phishing attempt I could dismiss. After verifying my identity, the rep said, "Yes, I see here online access was set up yesterday from a new device. The IP address appears to be in nearby city." My heart pounded. "Can you see what was done?" I asked. She clicked around. They enrolled in e-statements and added a new authorized user email, she said. And adam.miller.funds@gmail.com. My world tilted. "Can you remove that?" I croaked. She said she'd flag it and escalate to their fraud department, but she sounded confused. "Did you authorize an Adam Miller on this account?" she asked. "He's listed as a financial advisor." I hung up, my hands shaking. Pieces started clicking into place in my head, one after another, like a horrible Tetris. Adam having me sign routine forms without fully explaining them. Him suggesting consolidations and automatic sweeps. The fact that he, not me, had initiated a lot of the transfers Ms. Connors had flagged my memory of approving. A transfer to cover expenses, but not seeing the exact amount. The way he had relabeled some transactions under vague categories like family support. I opened my email and typed Adam into the search bar. Dozens of messages popped up. One from 2 years ago caught my eye. Subject, quick signature needed. The body, "Hey Jess, Attached is the form to give me limited trading authority on your mom's investment account so I can rebalance her portfolio. Totally standard. Sign and send back when you get a sec. The attachment was a scanned PDF. I opened it, zoomed in on the tiny print I hadn't bothered to read back then, trusting him. It said, "The undersigned hereby authorizes Adam Miller to act on behalf of the account holder in executing transactions, transfers, and reallocations." I felt like I was going to throw up. I called my lawyer immediately, forwarded him the bank email, a mailed message. He whistled low. "This changes things," he said. If he had access, there's a scenario where he could have been moving money in ways you weren't aware of. Then framing it as you're doing. Hearing someone else say the exact fear banging around in my skull made my knees go weak. But why? I asked. Why would he do that to me? To Aunt Linda? Mr. Patel was quiet for a second. "We'll need to find out," he said. "I'm going to recommend hiring our own forensic accountant. And I want you to stop talking to Adam directly. Everything needs to go through counsel now." Over the next week, while I was still reeling from court, we dug. The forensic accountant, this no-nonsense woman named Carla with glasses and a laser eye for detail, sat at my dining room table with 3 laptops and sacks of statements. She traced every dollar like a detective. "Here's the first irregular transfer," she said, pointing. 3 years ago, $5,000 moved from Linda's savings to an investment account managed by a firm Adam works with. Not unusual on its own. But then 2 months later, $4,800 was transferred from that investment account to a personal checking account ending in 3,941. She slid a printed page toward me. "That's not your account number, is it?" I shook my head. It wasn't. "Can you ask Adam if that's his?" Carla said, "Better yet, I'll subpoena the records." Soon a pattern emerged. Adam had been using Mom's accounts like a personal piggy bank, moving money through his advisor channels into accounts that weren't hers or mine. Then, when Rachel got suspicious and asked him to take a look, he'd shifted his strategy. He framed the stipend and the transfers he'd set up as my doing, conveniently leaving out his own skimming. He cherry-picked data to show Rachel a version of reality where I was the bad guy. Greed dressed up as concern. The worst part, the twist that made my stomach flip inside out, was why he'd done it. Carla found gambling site charges and PayPal transfers to what looked like online betting accounts, coming out of the 3,941 account. We also found a second, completely separate mess. High-interest loans in Adam's name, collection notices, a foreclosure proceeding on a condo he'd bought as an investment property. On paper, he was the image of financial success. In reality, he was drowning. And instead of tightening his belt or coming clean, he decided to quietly siphon money from the one person least likely to notice, my cognitively impaired mother, through the one person everyone would be quick to blame if anything went wrong. Emmy. When my lawyer laid out these findings in a supplemental brief to the court, attaching Carla's preliminary report, Rachel lost her mind. She called me for the first time since court, voice hoarse from screaming. "You're framing him now?" She yelled. "You're really that desperate?" I was in the middle of helping Mom brush her teeth. I stepped into the hallway so she wouldn't hear. "I'm not framing anyone," I said, my voice shaking. "We have documented transfers into his accounts. Your precious spreadsheets were rigged." She scoffed. "Adam said you'd do this," she snapped. "He warned me you'd try to throw him under the bus. He was just trying to protect Mom from you." I could have yelled back. I could have thrown every proof we had in her face. Instead, I asked a question that had been gnawing at me. "Rach, how much money have you borrowed from Adam in the last few years?" There was a pause. "What does that have to do with anything?" She said, "Just answer," I pressed. She muttered something under her breath. "A few grand here and there," she said reluctantly. He helped me with some stuff when you wouldn't. My heart sank. Did you pay him back? I asked. Silence. You think I don't want to? She snapped. Things have been tight. He said not to worry about it. He said he had other income streams. And there it was. His leverage. He'd been bankrolling her in small ways, playing the generous cousin, while quietly turning her into someone who wouldn't want to question where his money came from. The second hearing was a circus with a capital C. This time, our side came armed. Carla testified, walking the judge through flowcharts that made my head spin but clearly showed chunks of Mom's money detouring into accounts tied to Adam. Miss Connors tried to poke holes, suggesting maybe those were legitimate investments. Carla calmly pointed out the gambling site charges, the luxury purchases inconsistent with my mom's lifestyle. Does Miss Carter shop at Louis Vuitton? She asked dryly. The judge's mouth twitched. Not to my knowledge, he said. Then it was Adam's turn back on the stand, and the tone had flipped. Now it was my lawyer asking the questions. Mr. Miller, can you explain why funds from Linda Carter's accounts were transferred into this bank account, ending in 3,941? Mr. Patel asked, holding up the statement. Adam's tan had faded since the last hearing. He looked paler, sweat beading at his temple. Those were temporary holding transfers, he said. For rebalancing into DraftKings. Mr. Patel shot back, flashing a page of charges. A murmur went through the courtroom. The real breaking point came when Mr. Patel pulled out that old email I'd found. Is this your email address? He asked. adam.miller.funds@gmail. Adam nodded, jaw clenched. And is this your message to Jessica Carter asking her to sign a limited trading authority form? Yes, Adam said, cautious. So you admit you had authority to move funds among Linda Carter's accounts? Within the investment portfolio, yes, Adam hedged. Not to my personal accounts. Then how do you explain your name on these accounts receiving transfers? Mr. Patel pressed. Adam's composure cracked. Everyone does side allocations, he blurted. It's understood. I was going to pay it back. Jess knew. I did not know, I said loudly before the judge could stop me. All eyes swung to me. My heart hammered, but I couldn't keep quiet anymore. I never authorized you to take a cent from my mom for yourself. I trusted you. We all did. And you used that to ride your gambling problem. The word gambling landed like a grenade. Adam whipped his head around to glare at me. Rachel looked at him like she was seeing him for the first time. Mr. Miller, the judge said, voice icy, do you have a gambling problem? Adam's lips moved soundlessly. Finally, he muttered, I had some issues. But that's not relevant. The judge's eyebrows shot up. It is extremely relevant if you are managing an elderly woman's finances, he said. I'm ordering a full audit of your advisory practice, and I will be referring this matter to the State Securities Board. Adam went white. My aunt, sitting behind him, gasped. Rachel was called back to the stand again, this time looking less like the righteous crusader and more like someone whose world was cracking. My lawyer gently asked her, when you first became concerned about your mother's finances, who did you talk to? Adam, she said in a small voice. And how did he present the information to you? He said Jess was moving money without documentation, that she was paying herself too much, that if we didn't act, there'd be nothing left. Did he ever mention, Mr. Patel pressed, that he had been moving money into his own accounts? Rachel's eyes filled with tears. No, she whispered. The betrayal on her face in that moment was so raw that, despite everything, my heart hurt for her. The judge hasn't issued a final ruling yet. He reinstated my POA temporarily, but with the conservator still overseeing big transactions. He said, looking between me and Rachel, It's clear there have been serious breaches of trust in this family, not all of them by the person originally accused. That one sentence felt like a small vindication. Not a full exoneration. I still have to account for every dollar, still have to answer for the messy, imperfect ways I blurred lines under stress, but at least I'm not the only villain in the room anymore. After court, in the hallway, Rachel cornered me. For the first time in months, her eyes weren't full of accusation. They were full of confusion and something like shame. "Did you know?" she asked, voice shaky. "About Adam? About the gambling?" I shook my head. "No," I said. "I knew he liked to show off, but I thought he was just successful. I never imagined he'd do this." She looked down at her shoes. "I feel so stupid," she whispered. "I went around telling everyone you were stealing while he was literally stealing. Using my mom, using me." She laughed bitterly. "He'd text me like, 'I got you, cuz,' when he spotted me money. I thought he was the only one on my side." I swallowed hard. "You weren't stupid," I said, even though part of me had spent months calling her exactly that in my head. "You were hurting. You wanted to believe someone was looking out for you. He used that." She bristled slightly. "Doesn't excuse what you did either," she said, gesturing vaguely. I nodded. "I know," I said. "I should have been more transparent. I should have had better records. I should have told you about the stipend properly from the start instead of half hiding it." I took a breath. "But I was never trying to steal from Mom, Raj. Not 1 cent." She studied my face for a long moment, like she was trying to decide if she believed me. Finally, she said, "I don't know what I believe anymore." Then she turned and walked away. Later that night, my aunt called me sobbing. "How could he do this?" She kept repeating. "My own son. To my own sister." I didn't know what to say. I'd always envied Adam growing up, the golden boy, the success story. Now he was facing charges, possible loss of his license, maybe even prison. Greed had turned him into something we couldn't recognize. And yet, in some twisted way, the groundwork for all of this had been laid years ago, in the way our family talked about money as both a salvation and a weapon. "We take care of our own" had always been the mantra, but no one ever really defined what taking care meant. For my parents, it meant sacrificing so we'd have an inheritance. For Rachel, it meant Dad's savings were a safety net she should be able to access when life fell apart. For Adam, it meant other people's money was fair game as long as he planned to pay it back. For me, it meant grinding myself into dust to keep everyone else afloat, then being shocked when they looked at me like I was the one drowning them. I'm still sitting in the wreckage of it all. Mom is quieter these days, more confused. She doesn't really understand the legal stuff, thankfully. Sometimes she looks at me and says, "You're such a good girl, taking care of me," and I have to step into the other room and breathe so I don't break down. Part of me wants to go nuclear press criminal charges against Adam, countersue Rachel for defamation, cut off the entire extended family like a tumor. Another part of me is just tired. Tired of courtrooms, tired of explaining myself, tired of being the responsible one who ends up getting crucified when things go wrong. I've started setting boundaries. For the first time in my life, the conservator handles the big financial decisions now, which honestly is a relief. I still manage Mom's day-to-day care, but I've insisted on home health aides twice a week, paid from her funds. Rachel offered a half-hearted, "Let me know if you need anything," and instead of saying, "It's fine, I've got it," I sent her a schedule of specific tasks. Call Mom twice a week. Handle her prescription refills 1 month out of 3. Take her to church once a month. We'll see if she follows through. I'm not holding my breath, but I'm also not leaving the door wide open for her to barge in with accusations anymore. As for Adam, his real intentions are out in the open now, ugly and undeniable. The state's investigating his practice. Other clients have come forward with similar stories, temporary reallocations that never got reallocated back. His Instagram went from flashy to silent. My aunt is devastated, torn between wanting to protect her son and knowing he did something unforgivable. I don't know if I'll ever speak to him again. If he goes to prison, part of me will feel weirdly guilty, even though he did this to himself. That family guilt runs deep, like a reflex. I keep thinking about that moment in court when Rachel read my therapy appointments out loud, like they were something to be ashamed of. She sees a therapist every week, she'd said, as if that made me unreliable. At the time, I wanted to sink through the floor. Now, honestly, I'm glad I did. Therapy is the only reason I'm not completely shattered. My therapist keeps reminding me that wanting boundaries doesn't make me greedy, that protecting myself from being scapegoated doesn't make me cruel, that I can love my mother and still refuse to be legally crucified for other people's crimes. So here I am, typing this out to strangers on the internet because I don't know who else to tell. Today, my sister publicly humiliated me in court. She dragged out my bank statements, my mental health history, my darkest texts, and held them up like trophies. She called me a thief and a liar. Half of our family believed her. And then slowly, the truth started to leak through the cracks, that the real thief was the cousin we all thought was saving us, and that the lies were woven not just by him, but by years of unspoken resentments and jealousies we never dealt with. I don't know how this story ends yet. The judge could still decide I messed up enough to lose control over Mom's care. Adam could cut a plea deal and avoid serious consequences. Rachel could decide this whole mess was more my fault than his and never speak to me again. Or maybe slowly we can rebuild something out of this, something less toxic, with clearer lines and less blind trust. All I know is I'm done being the family's designated sponge, soaking up everyone else's mistakes until I'm wrung dry. If you'd seen me in that courtroom today, you would have seen a woman being torn apart. But underneath the humiliation, underneath the fear and the guilt, something else is starting to grow. Anger, yes, but also a kind of hard, necessary clarity. I can't control what my sister says about me. I can't rewrite the past where I trusted the wrong cousin and didn't speak up soon enough. What I can do, what I am doing, is finally choosing myself. Even if it means sitting on this hard wooden bench in the hallway of a courthouse, breathing through the urge to run and waiting for the judge to call my name again.